This book has changed my life, and I've heard so many other type 1 diabetics say the same thing. Diabetes Solution by Dr. Richard K. Bernstein is referred to as the Bible for diabetes. It's a step-by-step guide to normalizing blood sugars. It not only pertains to type 1 diabetes, but it's also great for gestational diabetes, type 2 diabetes, LADA, and many other forms. If you are serious about managing diabetes either for yourself or for a loved one, you must read this book. In his book, Dr. Bernstein does address the recommendation he'd give you for insulin regimens, oral medications such as glucophage or metformin, diabetes complications, how to avoid them, and how to care for them if you do develop one. He also addresses how to treat low blood sugars and high blood sugars, and of course he goes over the diet that he recommends. So if you've seen any of my other videos, I do refer to Dr. Bernstein and the Diabetes Solution book a lot. So that's where my target blood sugar of 83 comes from. That's what Dr. Bernstein recommends. It is the average blood sugar of a non-diabetic, so he considers that to be appropriate for any diabetic. Now, this video is going to focus mostly on the diet portion. It is going to be just a brief intro for those of you who have not read the book or heard of it. I would like to open it up to you and just strike interest. So the law of small numbers comes from the idea if you eat a small amount of carbohydrates, you will have to inject less insulin. So in theory, if you misdose, you will not go as high if you don't take enough insulin, and you will not go as low if you take too much insulin. It will be about small corrections and fine-tuning that. Dr. Bernstein does have a list of no-no foods he would like you to avoid as a diabetic. There are the obvious no-no foods, such as simple sugars, rice, pasta, cereal, bread. Then there's some that weren't quite so obvious to me in the beginning. Pretty much anything that grows underground, like a tuber, potato, carrots. I think radishes are allowed, but most of the things that grow underground are going to have too many carbs. Also, tomatoes, onions. So he does say that you can eat tomatoes in a small amount in a salad. Onions can be used to flavor food. I think he's pretty much advising that you don't eat something like French onion soup where there's a lot of onion in it. So I do eat tomatoes. I eat tomato paste, tomato sauce in very limited amounts, and also onion. I use onion in my cooking and I don't seem to have any problem with it. But like I said, it is not a large amount. All right, so what is left to eat after the list he gives you of no-no foods? And it is quite a long list. I just went over a little bit of it. This is basically going to be a meat and vegetable diet. There can be substitutions made for other foods. You can make like fathead dough out of cheese and almond flour and things like that. But he doesn't really talk about that too much, so that's a trial and error you're gonna need to do for yourself. It works for some people better than it works for others. I do eat things like that occasionally, but for the most part, to be able to measure my food properly and easily, it is easiest just to consider it a meat and vegetable diet and go from there. Don't focus on what you cannot eat, but focus on what you can. He has a huge list of vegetables. So with all of those foods that you are allowed to eat, Dr. Bernstein recommends you stick to about 30 carbs a day. Now he breaks that down into 6 carbs for breakfast, 12 carbs for lunch, and 12 carbs for dinner. Carbohydrates are not an essential nutrient. You do not need them to live or survive, but they are enjoyable even in the form of a vegetable. So he doesn't want to cut them out completely. That's why he allows 6, 12, and 12. Now you get half the amount that you do at lunch and dinner for breakfast. People are more insulin resistant in the morning, and you're also going to be dealing with dawn phenomenon more than likely, and possibly foot on the floor syndrome. I personally don't eat breakfast. I like to intermittent fast in the morning. I just have too many other things muddying the water, such as workouts and feet on the floor syndrome. So that's my own personal choice, and he's okay with that. He also recommends you split up protein the same way with your meals. Stick to the same amount of protein for every breakfast, the same amount for every lunch, and the same amount for every dinner. And protein is going to depend on your composition goals. So Dr. Richard K. Bernstein was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 12. Back then, things were a lot different. We did not have continuous glucose monitors or insulin pumps. He was able to obtain a glucose monitoring system because his wife was a nurse. So he was able to order one, and he started testing his blood sugars around certain meals. Notice that carbohydrates had the biggest effect on his blood sugars. Since carbohydrates had the biggest impact on his blood sugars, he decided to limit them and raise his protein in substitution for that. He found great success with that, and that's kind of where this diet came from. He was an engineer, so he did a lot of experimenting. He had a lot of data and just took it to the next level. He did present this information to doctors and medical journals. A lot of them were not interested, so he did become an endocrinologist. He is 89 years old now. I'm not sure if he's still taking patients in his office, but I know he does do a teleseminar I think he does it quarterly now. He used to do it once a month. This diet does seem very strict, and it is. It kind of becomes a way of life. It's a commitment. I don't follow everything to a T all the time. The way my life goes with my 2 young children and being a stay-at-home mom, I do need to make some exceptions to the rule. I can't eat the same meal every day, but I do, for the most part, stick to the same rotation, and I know how things are going to affect me, and I work with that. There are some people on Facebook I follow and Instagram. I will put the links down in the description below. There's a woman who is type 1 diabetic and her son is too. They're both on pumps, which Bernstein is against. I'm on a pump, you all know that. Just because he says what he recommends, you don't have to follow it 100%. As long as it works for you and you're able to keep your blood sugars in the range you want them. Just know that eating a low-carb diet is going to be the best way to do this no matter what route you take. There's another woman I follow on Instagram. She is not type 1 diabetic, but I think she's in the medical field, and her son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And she actually helped create the documentary Diabetes Solution and put it out there on a few different platforms, and it's all about promoting the book. So please watch that too. It's called Diabetes Solution, same title as Dr. Bernstein's book. Now, this just shows you how people manage their day-to-day life, trying to normalize their blood sugars, and they're very normal and healthy. Both of these kids are extremely active. One of them is a great tennis player. So I've recommended this diet to many parents of young type 1 diabetics, and I always get the question, is this diet good for a young child? Would they be able to follow it? Yes, it is possible to do this. I do recommend that the whole family follows along, because if you're telling your kid he can't eat Oreos and he has to eat berries instead of Oreos, that's going to be hard, him sitting at the table while his 2 siblings are munching on Oreos and he's trying to eat a healthier low-carb snack. But if the whole family gets on board and does it, it is possible, and it's very enjoyable. It not only benefits type 1 diabetics, it benefits everyone. Carbohydrates are very inflammatory. I don't think many people burn off the amount of carbs they eat. Try it out if you're interested. Let me know what you think. This was a very brief description of what is talked about in the book, so you are not going to get a lot from this video. This is just to strike your interest, so you go on Amazon and buy that book. It'll be overnighted to you. It's on Prime, and it's about $25. He also has a book called The Diabetes Solution Diet, I believe. I will link that in the description as well. That has some great recipes in it. So I really enjoy this diet. My family kind of eats the same way I do. I do allow my kids more fruit than I eat, and they do eat birthday cake when we go to birthday parties. I don't necessarily like it, but they are not diabetic. They show no signs of being type 1 diabetic. If they ever do, they will go on the same diet as I am on, and I will be very strict about it. But also, they do enjoy the foods I make for myself. They do like the keto treats I make sometimes, the low-carb substitutions. They enjoy it. When we have pizza night, we don't make normal pizza crust. We make a low-carb pizza crust, and my son loves it. I do have a niece who was diagnosed with epilepsy last year, and she's on a keto diet, and she's doing great. The amount of seizures she has now is a lot less than what she was having eating carbohydrates, eating like a normal 4 or 5-year-old. So I think it can benefit many people. Dr. Bernstein is not necessarily low carb, high fat. He's more low carb, high protein. He promotes protein for muscle growth and bone density and all that, all the great things that protein is good for. So keto diets are usually less protein, but he's not about going overboard on fat. I notice when I eat more fat, I have more insulin resistance. So it does kind of give me sticky highs and they're harder to correct. And I have to either extend my bolus a lot or temporarily raise my basal rates. And it's a lot going on and it's too much. So I would rather just keep my fat moderate and focus on my protein content. Anyway, I really hope this video strikes your interest in this book. It is amazing. This diet is definitely worth a try if you have any form of diabetes. If you know anyone with any form of diabetes, please let them know about it. Please have them watch this video. Direct them to the Amazon link I will put down below for Dr. Bernstein's book. I've had 2 successful pregnancies and births because of it. I feel like I owe that to Dr. Bernstein. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.